Have you ever been told that your spouse's emotions are not your responsibility? Maybe you've heard they need to regulate themselves. Their triggers are theirs to heal. You cannot make another person happy. All of those statements contain truth. You can't heal your spouse's childhood wounds, and you can't regulate every feeling that they experience. And you cannot become responsible for their worth, their happiness, security, or emotional stability. But does that mean the way you treat them doesn't matter? Does it mean you can trigger a painful wound repeatedly and then say, that's your problem to fix? Does personal responsibility mean marriage should operate as two emotionally separate people who never need comfort, reassurance, empathy, or support? No. Healthy marriage requires personal responsibility, but it also requires relational responsibility. Your emotions are yours to understand and regulate. My emotions are mine to understand and regulate. And the environment we create between us belongs to both of us. Today, we're going to talk about how to hold space for your spouse without losing yourself. We'll also talk about the difference between codependence, independence, and interdependence. We'll discuss how to support someone who carries trauma without believing you must heal them. We'll talk about why vulnerability can feel dangerous after you've been hurt. And I'm going to give you a practical process for knowing when and how to bring up a difficult topic. The teachings I'm going to talk about today are based on concepts that I recently learned from relationship expert Dr. Matt Townsend, whose work has had a meaningful influence on the tools that I use in my coaching every day. So let's get into it. Hey there, welcome to the Focus Podcast with Taralee. This is the place where we talk about real life, real relationships, and how to grow through it all. If you're looking for simple mindset shifts, better communication, and deeper connections, you're in the right spot. Let's dive in. Welcome to the Focus Podcast. I'm Taralee Eddington, and I help people navigate marriage crisis with greater clarity, emotional steadiness, and intentional action. Let's begin with the question underneath so many distressed relationships. Where does my responsibility end and my spouse's responsibility begin? When a marriage is struggling, couples often move toward one of two extremes. The first extreme is codependence. In codependence, your spouse's emotional state begins controlling you. If they are disappointed, you panic. If they are distant, you pursue. If they are angry, you over-explain. If they threaten to leave, you abandon your boundaries. And if they accuse you of something, you may apologize even when the accusation isn't true, because you desperately want the conflict to stop. Your internal message becomes, I cannot be okay unless you are okay with me. The second extreme is emotional independence taken too far. This sounds like your feelings are your responsibility, or I don't owe you reassurance, or you need to get over your triggers, or I can do what I want and you need to manage your reaction. Or I'm not responsible for how my choices affect you. And that may sound empowered, but it's not intimacy. It's emotional isolation. Marriage needs something beyond both of these extremes. It needs interdependence. Dr. Townsend teaches a progression from codependence to independence and then to interdependence. And let's talk about what this might look like. First, codependence says you are responsible for my emotional stability. It says, if you would change, I would feel better. It says, I can't tolerate your disappointment, or I have to fix every difficult emotion, or I need you to reassure me before I can calm down. A person in codependence may chase, they may control, overfunction, appease, or repeatedly abandon themselves. They may believe that they are being loving, but often they're trying to prevent fear. Independence says, I'm responsible for my emotional world. I can survive another person's disappointment. I can regulate myself. I can make a healthy choice even if my spouse does not approve. It says I don't have to abandon my values to prevent conflict. This is essential growth. You need the ability to stand on your own emotional feet. You need to know another person's reaction doesn't define your worth. You need to be able to pause, think, choose, and set boundaries. But independence is not the final goal of marriage. Interdependence says, I am responsible for myself, and I understand that the way I behave affects you. I won't ask you to control every emotion for me, but I will let you support me. It says, I will care about your experience without taking over your healing. It says, I will maintain my boundaries without becoming cold. I will tell the truth while still treating your heart with care. That is where mature connection lives. Imagine your spouse has a history of abandonment. Perhaps a parent repeatedly left, or threatened to leave, or was emotionally unavailable. You didn't create that original wound. You can't completely heal it for them. But suppose that every time you argue, you tell them, I'm done, or I want a divorce. I never should have married you. Then, once you calm down, you say, I didn't mean it, or you need to work on your abandonment issues. Your spouse does need to work on their healing, but you also need to stop repeatedly attacking the wound. You are not the sole cause of their fear. You are participating in the environment that keeps that fear alive. Or imagine your spouse has experienced betrayal. You can't promise that they will never feel suspicious again, and you can't remove the pain from their body, but you can become honest. You can follow through. You can answer reasonable questions. You can stop hiding information. You can become more predictable. You are not healing them. You are helping create an environment in which healing has a better chance. And that is an important distinction. Sometimes people hear the phrase, your feelings are your responsibility, and use it to escape accountability. They think, I can be sarcastic or dishonest or unpredictable, critical, or withdrawn, and your reaction is your problem. And yes, your spouse is responsible for how they respond, but you are still responsible for how you behave. The fact that someone is responsible for healing a wound does not give you permission to keep reopening it. Marriage is relational. Tone matters. Timing matters. Honesty, consistency, affection all matter. Withdrawal matters. Contempt matters. Repair matters. And you are not responsible for every emotion your spouse experiences. You are responsible for the emotional footprint you leave in the relationship. So what does holding space actually mean? And holding space is one of those phrases that sounds beautiful but can feel kind of vague. Holding space means allowing another person to have an emotional experience without immediately trying to control it. Your spouse says, I felt hurt when you said that. Holding space does not immediately say, that is not what I meant, or you are too sensitive. That's not what happened. Or what about what you did? I guess I can never say anything right. All of those responses may come from defensiveness, shame, fear, or a desire to correct the record, but they close the emotional door. Holding space may sound like, I can see that landed painfully, or help me understand what you heard, or what did that bring up for you? Or it says, I remember the situation differently, but I want to understand your experience. Holding space says, I am listening. Notice that holding space does not require false agreement. You don't have to say something that happened when it didn't. You don't have to accept an unfair character judgment. You don't have to take responsibility for everything that your spouse feels. You are simply making room for their experience before you rush to defend your own. Validation is not agreement. And I want to say that again. Validation is not agreement. Suppose your spouse says, you didn't answer my message for 2 hours and I felt like you were intentionally ignoring me. You may know that you were in a meeting and couldn't respond. You don't need to say, yes, I was intentionally ignoring you. That would be dishonest. But you could say, I understand that the delay felt unsettling and brought up fear for you. I was in a meeting and I wasn't intentionally ignoring you. I care about how it affected you, and I also need you to understand that I can't always respond immediately. That's empathy and truth together. You understand the emotional experience. You clarify the facts. You maintain a reasonable boundary. That's mature communication. Some people hear holding space and they believe that they must sit quietly while their spouse attacks or accuses or shames or insults them. But that is not holding space. That's tolerating harm. You can say, I care about what you're trying to tell me, but I can't listen while I'm being called names. Or you can say, I want to continue this conversation, but we need to lower our voices. Or you can say, I'm willing to hear your pain, and I'm not willing to be threatened. Or you can also say, I need to pause so I can respond respectfully. I'll come back at 7 o'clock so we can continue. And that last part matters because when possible, include a clear plan to return. A pause without explanation can feel like abandonment. A pause with clarity can create safety. I'm not ending the conversation, I'm trying to protect it. Holding space does not mean losing your voice. It means bringing your voice without using it to erase another person. Now, let's talk about vulnerability. People often say you just need to open up. But what happens when opening up has not been safe? Maybe you were abused as a child. Maybe emotions were mocked in your family. Maybe you learned that crying made things worse. Maybe a former partner used your private fears against you. Maybe your current spouse has dismissed or weaponized things that you shared. Your mind may understand that vulnerability is important. Your body may still respond as if vulnerability is dangerous. You may feel tension in your chest. Your throat may close. Your mind might go blank. You may become irritated, or you may make a joke. You may change the subject. You may suddenly need to leave the room. That does not always mean that you're unwilling to connect. It may mean your nervous system learned a very effective protective strategy. It may have learned don't reveal too much, or don't let them see weakness. Don't give anyone something that they can use against you. The goal is not to shame that protection. The goal is to show your nervous system that a different response is possible. One thing we should all learn is the practice of sitting with emotional pain for about 90 seconds without immediately attaching it to the entire historical story. Let's say your spouse gives you a disappointed look. You might feel fear. Then your mind begins adding meaning. They're rejecting me. I'm failing again. No one will ever accept me. This relationship's going to end. I never should have trusted them. What began as one present moment emotion becomes connected to every painful experience you have ever had. The practice is to separate the sensation from the story. You might say, I feel tightness in my chest, or my face feels hot. I feel the urge to defend myself. My mind is predicting rejection. This is an old fear script, or I can allow this feeling to be here without obeying it. Take a slow breath. Notice your feet on the floor. Notice the physical sensations. Don't fight them. Don't build an entire future around them. Let the emotional wave rise and fall. This doesn't mean the issue is imaginary. It means that you're giving yourself enough space to choose your response instead of automatically repeating the old one. Every time you practice a healthier response, you begin a new pathway. The fear script may still appear, but it does not have to remain in charge. Vulnerability does not require beginning with the most painful story of your life. Start smaller. You could say, I felt nervous before we talked, or I felt disappointed, but I don't know how to tell you. Or I wanted reassurance, but I was embarrassed to ask. Or you could say, I pulled away because I was afraid you would reject me. I acted angry, but underneath the anger, I felt hurt. These statements allow you to practice honesty without overwhelming yourself. Vulnerability is not all or nothing. It's a capacity that you build. Vulnerability should also include discernment. Not every person has earned access to your deepest wounds, and not every moment is the right moment. Not every relationship is emotionally safe. Healthy vulnerability is open, but it's not careless. So when should you raise a difficult topic? Many couples not only struggle with what they say, they struggle with when they say it. A valid concern raised at the wrong time can still create a damaging conversation. Dr. Townsend suggested checking the vital signs of the relationship. Is negativity low? Is understanding high? Is trust high enough? These are excellent questions. And let's add a few more. Are we both emotionally regulated? Do we have enough time? Are we alone? Are we capable of being curious? Am I trying to understand, or am I trying to prove? Do I know what outcome I want from this conversation? If you are flooded with anger, with fear, or defensiveness, it may not be the time to talk. If your spouse is leaving for work, it may not be the time to talk. If one of you is exhausted, intoxicated, distracted, or caring for children, it may not be time. If your goal is to make your spouse feel as much pain as you feel, it is definitely not time. You can say, there's something important I'd like to talk about. When would be a good time for us to have 30 minutes without distractions? That sentence respects the subject and the person. And before you bring the issue to your spouse, spend some time understanding your own experience. I recommend writing through 4 steps. First, name the emotion. Don't stop at upset. Are you afraid? Are you embarrassed? Rejected? Unimportant? Are you feeling lonely or disappointed or powerless? Angry may be the emotion on top, but there's often something more vulnerable underneath. Second, identify the story. What are the observable facts? What meaning did your mind assign to those facts? The fact may be, my spouse went quiet during dinner, but the story may be, they're pulling away from me. They don't care. They're thinking about leaving. They're punishing me. The story may be right, and it may be partly right. It may be completely wrong. You will communicate more clearly when you know the difference. Third, identify the starved need. I teach my clients about 7 important relational needs we all have, and I learned this from Dr. Matt Townsend. Those needs are safety, trust, appreciation, respect, validation, encouragement, and dedication. Which one feels threatened? Maybe you're not simply angry about a forgotten appointment. You feel unimportant and unappreciated. Maybe you're not simply upset about a private conversation being shared. Your need for trust and safety was affected. When you can name the need, you are less likely to attack your spouse's character. Fourth, ask whether the pain belongs to the past, present, or both. Your spouse may have done something hurtful today. It may also resemble something painful from your childhood or a previous relationship. Understanding the past does not excuse the present. It helps explain the intensity. You can say, what happened today mattered, and it also activated something older inside of me. That is self-awareness. Use the XYZ format that I've learned from Dr. Townsend. Once you understand your experience, communicate it using a simple structure. When X happened, I felt Y, and it affected my need for Z. Can we talk about it? Let me give you an example. When you interrupted me several times in front of your family, I felt embarrassed, and it affected my need for respect. Can we talk about what happened? Or when you said you would call and I did not hear from you, I felt anxious, and it affected my need for trust and safety. Can we discuss how to handle that next time? Or when I shared what I was worried about and you immediately gave me advice, I felt dismissed, and it affected my need for validation. Could you listen for a few minutes before helping me solve it? This format is not magic, and your spouse may still become defensive, but it helps you present the concern without immediately using blame, exaggeration, or character attacks. It's much easier to hear, when this happened, I felt hurt, than to hear, you are selfish and you never care about anyone but yourself. Here's another important part of emotional maturity. Not every thought needs to become a conversation. Sometimes you process an emotion and realize it has passed. Sometimes you recognize that you were making an assumption. Sometimes the issue was primarily connected to an old fear rather than a current pattern. And sometimes the thought is simply mental noise. So before sharing, ask, is this continuing to affect the way that I treat my spouse? Ask yourself, is there a pattern that needs attention? Is there a request that I need to make? Is there a boundary that needs to be clarified? Will sharing create understanding or repair? Or am I hoping my spouse will remove an emotion that I need to learn how to carry? There are times when silence becomes avoidance. There are also times when restraint is wisdom. Let me give you an example. A husband comes home from work and is quiet. His wife notices the silence and immediately becomes afraid. Her mind starts telling her, he's angry. He's pulling away. He regrets staying. She begins asking questions. What's wrong? Are you upset with me? Why are you acting like this? And then he feels pressured. So he says, nothing's wrong, leave me alone. Then she feels more afraid and she follows him. He feels more controlled and withdraws further. Now both people are reacting from fear. The wife's work is not to pretend his withdrawal has no effect. Her work is to regulate before pursuing. She might tell herself, I'm noticing fear. His silence doesn't automatically mean rejection. I can ask clearly and then give him room. The husband's work is not to say her anxiety is her problem. His behavior affects the emotional environment. So he might say, I had a difficult day. I'm not angry with you. I just need 20 minutes to decompress and then I will come find you. She takes responsibility for her fear and he takes responsibility for communicating clearly. Neither person becomes responsible for controlling the other. Both contribute to safety. That is interdependence. So this week, choose one of 5 practices. 1. Regulate before reacting. Pause. Name the emotion. Identify the story. Notice the need. Allow the emotional wave to pass before choosing what to do. 2. Hold space for 5 minutes. When your spouse shares, don't immediately fix, correct, or defend. Ask, what was that like for you? Or what did you need? Or what would help you feel understood? 3. Share one vulnerable truth. Not an accusation, a truth. I felt afraid. I felt lonely. I don't know how to ask for help. I wanted to feel important to you. 4. Set one clear boundary. I want to continue, but I won't stay in a conversation where we are insulting each other. Then explain when you are willing to return. And 5. Choose better timing. Don't ambush your spouse. Ask for a calm time to talk. Check the emotional vital signs first. Your spouse is responsible for their healing and you are responsible for yours. Both of you are responsible for the kind of relationship you create between you. You don't have to become your spouse's therapist. You don't have to prevent every trigger. And you don't have to abandon your needs or your boundaries or truth to prove that you care. You can hold space without disappearing. You can validate without falsely agreeing. You can support without rescuing. You can set a boundary without punishing. You can practice vulnerability without becoming careless. And you can tell the truth without using it as a weapon. This is the movement from codependence through independence into interdependence. It's the ability to say, I am responsible for myself, you are responsible for yourself, and because we are building a life together, I will care about the impact that I have on you. That is how safety grows. That's how vulnerability becomes possible. And that's how difficult conversations become more productive. And it's how 2 responsible individuals begin becoming one. So thank you for listening to the Focus Podcast today. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And please share this episode with someone who's trying to understand the difference between supporting a spouse and becoming responsible for them. Then ask yourself, what is one way I can create more emotional safety this week without abandoning myself? I will see you next time. Thanks for hanging out with me today on the Focus Podcast. If something stood out or helped you in some way, feel free to share it or leave a quick review. It means a lot. Keep showing up, keep growing, and I'll catch you in the next episode.